Let's try the famous, and why not so highly rated Terere Pantano, huh? They say this one sends you straight to the bathroom, right? Dude, Grido. Paco, the ice cream guy, has arrived in Paraguay. Just now, an officer came up to me and asked me, please not to go down here to La Chacarita. You really shouldn't go in, honestly. It's complicated, I don't recommend it, but I haven't forbidden you. As a police officer, is it hard for you to go in? Honestly, yes. Should we listen or go in anyway? Imbahia Chapa, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Un Topo por el Mundo. We are in Asunción, the capital of the Republic of Paraguay. I greeted you in Guarani, which I think was a -10, but oh well, we tried. I'm here just a few meters from the Paraguay River, which is where this country gets its name from. In the Guarani language, it means something like water that forms a great sea, referring to its mouth at the Paraná River, which then flows into the Rio de la Plata and eventually ends up in the Atlantic Ocean. We're in a country, let's say, a small one, 6 million inhabitants. 2.3 million of them live here in its capital, in Asunción. And the vast majority of the population is concentrated on its western side, along the borders with Brazil and Argentina. On its western side, less than 5% of Paraguay's population lives, that is, along its border with Bolivia, which is where the Chaco Boreal is, a whole jungle area. And speaking of the Guarani language, one of the indigenous peoples who lived in this area were precisely the Guarani, but they were not the only ones. It is believed that the Guarani had a great predominance here. In fact, their language is still spoken to this day. It is the official language of Paraguay, and the vast majority of its population speaks it. There are even people who can speak Guarani and very little Spanish. Many say Paraguay, especially Asunción, is safe, though some women warned me about thieves. Coming from Buenos Aires, I know you always have to be cautious, but it would still be a hassle. I carry my camera here. Well, I don't know if you can tell, but I always keep it tied up, so I have a strap that prevents it from being snatched, you know. I think I just avoided one. A motorcycle passed by and seemed like he might grab it, but he saw it and kept going. That kid was coming on the motorcycle. He got up on the sidewalk. Really weird. I have the camera tied up and maybe he tried to snatch it, but when he saw it was tied up, he said, no, better not. I won't mess with Topo around the world. Today it's 38 degrees, damn. If we survive and you can watch this video, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell and all that. That's how we feel your support. I'd say your hug, but with this heat, better not. A bucket of cold water, that's what your subscription would mean? Your subscription right now? Now then, you might be wondering how the Spaniards arrived in these lands. In the year 1524, a group of explorers arrived in this territory, but they didn't settle. What is documented is that this was the first time Spanish people set foot on what is now Paraguay. However, a decade later, in 1536, Pedro de Mendoza unsuccessfully founded the city of Buenos Aires. The fort he had built was destroyed and they had to escape like rats. Where did they go? Here. That's how, in 1537, they founded the city of Asunción. We could say, you went to Paraguay because you were a coward. No, better cut this part, Topo. The fact that this city was founded in 1537 and that as a result the other cities of Paraguay were founded is what gives Asunción the name the mother of cities. It would be like the Santiago del Estero of Paraguay, but as soon as they settled here, they had their issues. There was a very emblematic case known as the case of the Indian woman, Juliana, who was a Guarani servant exploited by the Spanish colonialists, killed her exploiter, her Spanish master. Feminist rebellion and insurgency in Paraguay 15 years ago. What do you think? Long live India Juliana? The thing is, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who was the governor of Paraguay at that time, had India Juliana beheaded. He sentenced her to death. But Paraguay kept showing a rebellious spirit. Here we have this building that used to be the Cabildo, and here in 1717 the revolt of the Comuneros took place. It was the prelude to independence. The Guarani, exploited by the Spanish under a feudal regime, rebelled against the system that challenged the legitimacy of the Spanish Empire's rule. I just passed the waterfront and saw a group of soldiers who were really drunk. We are walking along the main street of the historic center of Asunción, which is Calle Palma. We could say it's similar to Florida Street in Buenos Aires, but in this case it's not a pedestrian street. Look at how impressive this building is. It's kind of like the Soviet Union, and with the Tokyo sign up there. Look, among the River and Boca jerseys, they also sell the Lanús jersey here. It seems that several people started supporting Lanús here after they became champions. And that's a feeling I wanted to share with you. I see Asunción as a bit similar to Malabo, the capital of Equatorial Guinea. Just some flashes, you know. Obviously, with all their big differences, but there are little things that remind me of my recent visit to the only country in Africa that speaks Spanish. Obviously, there's the common factor of having been a Spanish colony, but it has that kind of similarity. Wow, another strange building over there. But in that particular case, it's abandoned. We're in one of the squares in the historic center of Asunción, which is Plaza de la Libertad. There's a bit of everything here. You've got people selling sportswear, and over here, various crafts that are really nice to take as souvenirs. You already know Topo is a minimalist. He doesn't buy these things, but for example, here we have an amazing tablecloth, really high quality. I don't know how much it is. Hi, how are you? How much are the tablecloths? That one is cotton. That one is 3.5 meters. 400,000 guaranis, but I have smaller ones. Wow, I noticed they're selling the United States flag right next to the Paraguayan flag. How much are the flags, sir? That's the United States one. The United States one is 60,000. We have flags from every country here, but I only see the US one. Here we have Italy and France. Girls, let me ask, is any of those terere pantano? Let's try the famous, and why not so highly praised terere pantano here, huh? They say this one sends you straight to the bathroom, right? Not at all, huh? Not at all? Dude, it's super refreshing, huh? Delicious, thank you, huh? So soothing. It's like drinking cachamay and adding a little extra. Walking through the historic neighborhood of Asunción, we're going to come across this place where on the night of May 14th, 1811, the conspirators achieved Paraguay's independence from the Spanish Empire. As we can see in history, Paraguay's independence was heavily influenced by the May 25th, 1810 revolution in Argentina. And in the following years, it led to the different revolutions that took place in the rest of the South American territories. An interesting fact is that when Paraguay gained its independence in 1811, they wanted to join the United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata. But the Buenos Aires elite said no, a bunch of hypocrites. Argentina and Paraguay have a lot of history together. Sometimes in positive cases like this, sometimes in negative ones, as we'll talk about soon. Dude, Greedo! Paco the ice cream guy has arrived in Paraguay. Hi, how are you? Can I use the bathroom? Oh, do I have to buy something or not?
You have to buy something, right? Thanks. Greedo sucks. They won't let you use the bathroom unless you buy something. Who wants that lousy ice cream?
I'm tempted to just pay them for ice cream, but ask them not to serve it so my taste buds aren't ruined. Why did I drink so much tereré? I came to have a lemonade to cool off because the heat is intense. And we're on the terrace of Manzana, Rivera. This is a historic block in Asunción that has endured since colonial times. And behind me we have the Palacio López, which is none other than the government house of Paraguay. And this palace has a very interesting history. It's called López after Carlos Antonio López, president of Paraguay since 1844. And he was a very visionary and very nationalistic person. Just to give you an idea, he promoted the development of the railway already in the middle of the 19th century when the railroad was still a novelty. He also brought technicians from Europe to Paraguay, and he sent Paraguayan people to study in Europe to improve their knowledge. Among them was his son, Francisco Solano López, and he even became the president of Paraguay after his father's death in 1862. Construction on this palace began in 1857. But in 1864, one of the most tragic historical events in Paraguayan history took place. During Francisco Solano López's presidency, Paraguay was struck by the War of the Triple Alliance. How did this happen? To Uruguay. At that time, there was a dispute between the Blancos and the Colorados. Brazil sided with the Colorados, and for that, they launched an invasion. At this point, Francisco Solano López was quite alert, and he saw a ship passing through the Paraná River, the Marqués de Olinda. On it was the appointed governor for Mato Grosso, Carneiro de Campos. And so, with the seizure of that ship and having the appointed governor for Mato Grosso, they started pressuring him to get information out of him. And indeed, Francisco Solano López was right, because they had planned the invasion of Paraguay with 12,000 soldiers, 6,000 of whom were already near the territory, and another 6,000 who were about to arrive, and that's how the war began. That was the casus belli. At the beginning, Marshal López was doing quite well in the battle, but on May 1st, 1865, Argentina, which was governed at that time by Bartolomé Mitre, allied itself with Brazil and Uruguay. And they formed the Triple Alliance. And so, on March 1st, 1870, Marshal Francisco Solano López was killed by the enemy troops of the Triple Alliance, and that resulted in the end of the war in Paraguay. Both sides suffered terrible diseases, like a cholera epidemic. This war even brought yellow fever to Argentina years later, and it is estimated that 2/3 of the men died. And it was a society of widows and single women. In this way, Paraguay was left depopulated, and there was no way to make it grow. And they were so desperate for the population to grow that polygamy was normalized for men. Those who survived could have several wives, or at least have children with several women if it was acceptable. Meanwhile, the victorious countries, that is, Argentina and largely Brazil, they went on a territorial land grab, they took over everything they could from Paraguay, and as a consequence of the war, this palace we have here, the government house, it was practically destroyed in 1868. Once the War of the Triple Alliance ended, they began to restore this palace, and it was reopened in 1892, with some missing parts which were completed 2 years later in 1894. From then on, it was finished just as we can see it today, 24,000 guaranis. I bought a juice on that terrace so I could film myself with the government house of Paraguay in the background. $3.50. For Paraguay, that's expensive. Cocos, which I'm using all over Paraguay without any problem. I use the money I have in pesos and it converts it automatically when I pay. At the best exchange rate of all, I don't have to worry about card fees, taxes, or any of that stuff. I pay for it with the Cocos card and it converts it for me directly. I'm not going to complain about the price of lemonade because we're making up for it with the profits we get. With the mutual funds I have in Cocos. A lot of people are writing to me on Instagram. They comment on my messages. They send me WhatsApp messages. They say, Topo, what's up? How do I invest in Cocos? You talk about it so much, you mention it so much. I want this card too. I'll put a link in the video description and first pinned comment so you can download Cocos. They'll explain everything there. Look at the name of the street where the government house is located, El Paraguayo Independiente. The historic center has very few colonial buildings because everything was destroyed during the War of the Triple Alliance. What we can see is already a little later. Something important to mention is that Paraguay was poised to become a power in South America. And the War of the Triple Alliance wiped it out. There was even a lot of British influence to help destroy Paraguay, which at first ended up being a satellite state of Brazil. And it was very hard for it to develop again, not only because of that, but also because of the 20th century. For Paraguay, it was a disaster. For example, between 1932 and 1935, they fought a war against Bolivia. Even the last peace treaty, which ended it completely, was signed in 2009 in Buenos Aires. And well, not to mention that, until 1989, They suffered the disastrous dictatorship of Stroessner, which lasted more than 40 years, and just like what happened in different countries in Latin America, it ended the lives of many young people who became known as the Disappeared, and this square remembers them. Here we are inside the Pantheon of Heroes, and here lie the remains of Paraguay's national heroes. It gives me goosebumps. Being so close to the mortal remains of these iconic figures gives me chills. Even José Gaspar Rodríguez de Francia is here. He was the figure behind Paraguay's independence in 1811. This building began construction in 1863. During the government of Francisco Solano López, the main goal was to serve as the oratory of the Virgin of the Assumption. But as a consequence of the War of the Triple Alliance, all construction was obviously halted. And it was only finished in 1936, that is to say, more than 70 years. That's how long it took to complete this building, and later the remains of Paraguay's heroes were placed here. As we can see today, it's 1 in the afternoon. I just happened to catch the changing of the guard. They're there for quite a while. Those poor guys in this heat, well, at least they're in the shade. But standing there in full uniform and everything, what endurance! Hats off to them, my congratulations. Oh look, right here in front of the National Pantheon we have the 0 point of Asunción, just a few meters from the government house and from the Legislative Palace, and even next to the cathedral and the Catholic University. We have the entrance to the La Chacarita neighborhood. It's a marginalized neighborhood here in Asunción, right next to downtown. There's a really good video by my dear friend, colleague Las Rutas de Juan. He has visited this neighborhood. There are high-end cars parked just a few meters from the entrance to La Chacarita. An officer just approached me to ask me not to go down here to La Chacarita.
You really shouldn't go in.
It's complicated, no?
It's not that I don't recommend it. I forbid you to go in because...
And as police, do you have trouble getting in or? Honestly, yes. Should we listen to him or just go in? I would just go in. But you know, you should always go to these places with someone familiar with the area, like La Ruta de Juan did. He went with a local resident. That let him avoid any problems. In the distance is La Costanera, very close to the government house. There's an amazing playing field there, perfect for a quick game. It even looks like it's for professional soccer, you could say. They're playing with their respective team jerseys. But anyway, we're not going to get out. We'd get ourselves into trouble. Because if not, we'll end up coming back feet first. Well, I cut my afternoon short to come to the hotel, take a shower, and get a break from this heat. While I'm at it, I'll show you the room a bit. It's awesome. I got 2 beds, probably because they didn't have any other option. Simple as that. It cost me $50 a night. It includes a full breakfast, pool, and sauna. So yeah, it's pretty good. The decor is a bit old-fashioned, but it's functional. I actually like that kind of style, like from the 60s or even the 50s, you could say. How old school? Very 60s. And it wasn't a freebie. I paid for it. Cash. But anyway, I'm showing it because I think $50 for this kind of hotel isn't expensive at all. Now, if the hotel sees the video and writes to me and says, Topo, we invite you back to Paraguay. Or maybe we could even do some kind of promo where you use a code and there's a Topo discount for people who come here. Well, that would be great. And the most retro thing about the whole room is the bathroom. Well, it's already been used. I took a shower, but it has these brown colors. Classic. I like it. The hotel is no joke. In this very place, none other than Mirta Legrand stayed. For those who aren't from Argentina, she's like our Queen of England, sort of, but with Argentine characteristics. And Moria Kazan was here too. Wow, dude. Wait, Mercedes Sosa was here. Horacio Guarani? No way. Dude. Seriously, Charlie was in this hotel. Well, Fito too. Here's the photo. Look how young they were. What do you think? They should put a photo of a mole around the world in this Hall of Fame. Not yet. I still need a few more followers for that. So subscribe to the channel. That way you help me reach the Hall of Fame. Oh, the phone. And I came back to the historic center. Let's see what's going on here at night. It's pretty lively. There are people wandering around. I don't know what they're up to. Everything is very well lit. I like how it's decorated. And the corners have little stands there with a bartender who sells you drinks. That's cool. The party gets going right out in the street. I went down to the waterfront. Everyone is here. It's a must stop for a walk at this hour. At night, when it cools down a bit, there's a breeze. I even see people down there on the grass. I don't know how they got there. Well, they jumped over and went in. I don't know if it's allowed. I don't think so. And over there's an amusement park with a huge Ferris wheel. Well, I don't know what you call it in your countries. And I don't know if the camera can catch it. But on the opposite side, it's still Paraguayan territory. And further back, you can see some lights that already belong to the Argentine Republic. Right here is the city of Clorinda, which is part of the province of Formosa. It's a province I still haven't had the chance to visit. Let's go into this area here, which is where they sell cell phones of questionable origin. Do you have iPhones too?
iPhone, all the models.
Original, huh? Original.
100% original.
New in the box.
Brand new, sealed in the box.
The 17.
The 17 Pro Max, you're going to be able to put it on.
Hey, and that kiss mark there on your neck. So we can say that Paraguay is a Boca fan. Boca fan. Dude, there's an economics museum. Look at how interesting this is. Here there's an interactive screen where you can decide the nation's budget. Let's see. Suddenly you start walking around here and you feel like you're in a little piece of Beverly Hills. It's a miniature version of American cities. American cities.